here are the shortcuts I use for accurately identifying which vertebrae I'm on, for the sacrum and for the lumbar spine. First of all, I like to find the Psis, right, the posterior superior iliac spine, which is that little bubble you can feel. And it's more of a palpatory thing than a visible thing. Sometimes you can see a dimple, and you can in her, which is going to be normally somewhere in relation to the Psis. Do I have a spine here? Do we have like a plastic spine or a real spine? No. Oh, he took it back. He took it back. Okay. Fair enough. So this is the Psis, posterior superior iliac spine. It's like a little bubble under your fingers. And if you're not familiar with bodywork and acupuncture, then you definitely need to kind of just get the feeling for this, because this is just a palpation thing. You put your hand here just flat and you roll it around, and you're going to feel this on pretty much anybody, with very few exceptions, no matter how big they are or how small they are. It's just normally easily palpable. So the Psis sits at the level of either S2 or S1 in terms of the sacrum. Okay, let me just define this for you. I'm going to find the hiatus of the sacrum. That's where the sacrum ends and the tailbone begins, which is really S5. And I'm going to find, excuse me if my hands are cold, I apologize for that. I'm going to find L5 and make sure I'm in the right place. Yeah. So there's L5, S1, and there's the hiatus of the sacrum. So this is how long her sacrum is, right? So the sacral vertebrae, S1 through S4, are almost always about the same, what's the description? Vertical length. In other words, it's not like this is the biggest and this gets smaller and this gets even smaller and this is tiny. That once you've got the span of the sacrum, do we have any body pens? It'd be really fun to draw this.
I don't think we do.
Oh, got to get some for tomorrow. Okay. I'll go find some. Once you look at the sacrum, S1 and S2 and S3 and S4 are all going to be about the same size. And that's fairly consistent with people. So I didn't figure this out. I learned this when I was teaching acupuncture, because I started teaching acupuncture about, 15 years ago. And I had to teach the spine, and I totally lost it. I lost the whole, I couldn't do it properly, because I had not been taught. I don't think I knew how to do it. I'm not going to go into what I was taught. I did not effectively learn how to find spine points. So then I hooked up with all these chiropractors and osteopaths, and I got some good ideas, and some acupuncture people. So if you take your hand like this, right, where the thumb is going to be at the level of the hiatus of the sacrum, the little finger is going to be at the level of L5, S1. Each of these zones will correspond to S1, S2, S3, S4 if you put your fingers about equidistant. It's just an easy way to do it, right? You can just kind of look at it and go, okay, well, that's probably S1, that's probably S2, that's probably S3, S4. So then I'm going to find the Psis. It's normally at the level of S1 or S2, and it's often in between the two, right? So it sits sort of in between the two, typically, where you feel the high point of it. So, and indeed, that's the case with her, right? There's her Psis. There's S1, there's S2, there's S3, there's S4, and there's the S5, which is actually just completely compressed. So S1 is fire, right? The fire zone, and corresponds to bladder 27 and the small intestine, and then S2 is water, and S3 is Zhonglu Shu and the earth energy, in my opinion, and S4 is the wood energy corresponding to the genital region, and so on. So when we look at how acupuncture delineates the acupuncture points, basically your back shu line, that inner bladder line that we're so interested in, is just running down on the middle of the paraspinal muscles. And we can easily palpate it like this, right? Here's her back shu line. And of course that's mainly what I'm doing. When I'm working on the back, I'm going down the spine, feeling for where there's blockage. Oh, how interesting, I found some.
I do.
That wasn't
you
hard.
can find many.
That wasn't hard. I'm not quite sure where I'm at, because I haven't looked at the rest of the spine, but that was probably a pancreas. Do you have hyperglycemia?
No.
Okay. Digestion's good?
But I have a liver cystic
No, it's liver chi going across. Oftentimes the liver chi will be much more, it is, much more evident here on the right, but it can go over to the left too. So anyway, so you're palpating down the paraspinal muscles, and that's your inner shoe line. And then that line, just according to Chinese medicine, just extends straight across the sacrum like it wasn't even there. I'm not sure what I think about that. I think what I think about that is that at some point when they were defining the acupuncture channel system, they got scared of touching people's butts. No, seriously. Because I think that's because it pays no attention to the sacrum, right, to the actual shape of the sacrum. Just, the line just goes right on through like the whole bone isn't there. Back when the Neijing was being really written, I don't think they were scared of touching people's bodies at all. The Neijing evidence is that they even worked with dead bodies to just kind of figure out lengths of things and shapes of things, and lots of living bodies. But then by the time the Neijing was being codified, 500, 600 years later, for sure they were scared of touching people's butts. And that remained so in China until last week. Maybe it's changing. So anyway, the back shoe line, according to Chinese medicine, just extends straight down. According to reality, it probably doesn't. Probably those zones of influence probably connect more to the sacroiliac joints. So once you've defined where is S1, S2, S3, S4, which is where is the fire influence, the water influence, the earth influence, the wood influence relative to the pelvis, relative to the gynecological and genital organs and so on, then you want to start looking at the sacroiliac joints. Now the sacroiliac joints, of course, are running in here, and they're easy to palpate, and they're more interesting from a bodywork point of view than the back shoe points that just kind of run over the sacrum. Although those can also be interesting, and sometimes interestingly painful too. So the first thing I'm going to do when I'm working on the sacrum is I'm going to take a look at the sacroiliac joints. And I'm going to, like there, for example, and I'm going to figure out which sacroiliac joint corresponds to which sacral vertebra, just on the horizontal level, right? So that if I found like a lot of stuff going on out here, and these are normally sore on most people to some extent, and so then this becomes not so much about elements as it becomes about structure, right? Because the sacroiliac joints are going to express the structure of the hips and how the hips, are positioned and aligned and rotated or not rotated, as well as they might be an expression of something going on at an element level. So just to kind of keep that in mind. At this point with the sacroiliac, we may be working something a little more simple and fundamental than an element. We might just be working on structural alignment, which might also reflect an element, right? So I'm going to just go through and look for that spot that I thought was sore. Was that it? That's it. Cool. And then I'm going to notice something. I'm going to look around and notice. Freckles, spots, pimples, funny little things on the body are like signposts. They're often relevant. Not always, I don't think. Maybe, who knows? Maybe some insect bit her right there. And it's not relevant. But even that might be relevant. Very often you'll see signs of imbalance. Just little discolorations, little marks. You should pay attention to those. So now I'm going to figure out what sacral vertebrae I'm on, because I've totally lost it. But here's the Psis, right? So I know this is S2. So I know this is S3. So I know that here, if it has an element aspect, it's earth. It corresponds to Zhonglu Shu, bladder 29, right? And there it is. It's this kind of sore, tight thing in her. So even though I haven't looked at the rest of her body, except I did look up here a little bit, I'm wondering about earth as an energy for her. Like, does she have enough earth energy?
Because it's in
Oh,
line.
she's shaking her head
Oh, no.
in the horizontal plane. I guess she doesn't.
Because it's in line
Yeah,
with S3.
just because of that.
Just
that.
Okay.
And it's a speculation. I don't really know for sure. It might have nothing to do with it, but it might have something to do with it.
It's also the cluneal nerve.
Oh, tell me about that.
So the cluneal nerves come out of the iliac crest,
That's awesome.
and they meet here with the gluteal nerves, it's a very key point where a lot of people are tender.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware a lot of people tend to know. I'd never
That's
heard
why,
of a
because
cluneal
there-
nerve before. That's fascinating.
There's three, they come out of
Wow.
the iliac crest.
Whoa.
They go here and they meet the gluteal nerves, which come out of the
Wow.
sacrum and meet
Yeah, yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They cross and they often get bunched up because
How
the
interesting.
people are weak in their gluteals
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they all get
Yeah.
messed up there.
So that's great. Thank you. I've definitely learned something new, and I'm going to be looking up cluneal.
Yeah,
How do I spell it?
C-L-E-A-N, I'm terrible with spelling.
So we
C-L-U-E.
basically on bladder 20
Like
nerves,
clue,
right?
C-L-U-E.
No, I'm not. I'm on the sacral
N-A-L,
iliac
like that.
joints.
Oh,
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
'cause it's
So,
more gallbladder.
Let me talk to you a little bit about
C-L-U-N-E-A.
Japanese thinking.
Yes, that's it. I knew it
A
was-
lot of modern Japanese acupuncture also is paying far more attention to the sacroiliac crest than it is to these specific points here, because of the power of the sacroiliac joints to shift things at the level of the pelvic alignment and so on. And this work comes a lot from Kiko Matsumoto, who learned it from Nagano's sacral points. And what Nagano often looks at the relationship of the sacroiliac to what's going on with the shoulders and the shoulder blades, and he calls it four corners. And I think it's a fundamental idea of chi stagnation. That when somebody's chi is stagnant, but you could also look at it as a fundamental concept of earth. The limbs and the functionality of the limbs are an expression of earth energy in Chinese medicine. When somebody, that's actually made specific in the Neijing in a number of different statements. And when somebody doesn't have sufficient earth energy, their limbs become weak, right? So, and when their chi is stagnant, then also you see this. That also is when you tend to see sacroiliac and shoulder stuff. And if you remove the blockages in the sacroiliac and remove the blockages at the level of the shoulder blade, then the chi flows. And then you can start accessing organs and elements and all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of like a first layer. You remove the stagnation here. I think I've done enough there. Sorry. You remove the stagnation there, you remove the stagnation, you remove it here, and it's like you've cleared the terrain. And Nagano calls that four corners, which I think is very fundamental. It's very influenced by osteopathy. A lot of Japanese acupuncture got quite
It's the
influenced
same
by
philosophy of
yeah.
Rolfing.
a lot
That's the
of
first thing you do.
Japanese acupuncture. Can I scoot these down just a touch more? A lot of Japanese acupuncture got very influenced by osteopathy, in their thinking and their understanding, which I think is cool. So now I'm going sacroiliac. I'm down at sort of S5 basically, S4 level probably, S3 level. S4 was tight, wasn't it?
Yeah. And this one as well.
It's worse on this side. There's more blockage on this side, which is interesting. Well, at least there is
Right
here.
there.
There's more blockage lower down on this side. There's more blockage there on this side, so that's interesting. And so I'm just working up. Now I'm also noticing that,
You're still in the sacral iliac joint?
yeah, there's a tattoo right here. Now, my personal observation is that tattoos are always, they're always relevant. They always tell you something about the person that's normally fairly easy to figure out. And so I'm interested in why somebody has a tattoo, when they had the tattoo put there, what it means to them. And then I'm interested in looking at it in relation to the subtle energetic anatomy of the body. Actually, I was wrong in my estimation. It was way lower here. But here's her Psis. And so her tattoo is at the level again of S3. Because here's her Psis. S2, S3 tattoo. Sorry,
Right there.
that's kind of painful though, isn't it? I'm squishing the seagull and the seagull is squawking. Is it a seagull? It's great, I like
John
it.
Livingstone.
All right, good for you.
Right there.
It's at the level of okay, so just to analyze it, as a tattoo and what the symbolic meaning of it is, first you want to think about where it is. It's on her right hip. So the hips tend to express freedom, the ability to run, the ability to kick somebody away from you. I mean, you use your arms to pull somebody towards you. You don't use your feet and your legs to pull somebody towards you. You use your feet and your legs to kick them out of your life, or to run and escape and get free, right? This is at the level of S3, which is, I'm going to suggest to you, is earth energy, corresponds to Zhonglu Shu, and so, and it's the right hip, and the right hip tends to do with our relationship to the world, where the left hip would tend to do with our relationship more intimately. So the appearance of a seagull there makes me think, what's your name?
Busmat.
Bosmat.
Yeah.
That Bosmat has worked with the themes of entrapment and freedom and needing to break free or break out of. That makes sense?
Completely.
Yeah. So we now know something about Bosmat.
No
It's
earth element.
no.
There's no
And
earth
then
element.
also there's an earth element connection there too, which is she lacks a little bit of earth in her energetic
Yeah.
nature, and so she's kind of just talking about that a little right there. That's kind of fun, isn't it?
That's so accurate.
So anyway, I'm going to palpate the sacral iliac. I'm going to think about the resonance. I'm going to look for tight points. There was really tight points, almost down at the. It's actually down at the coccygeal level down here, and I'm going to come in a little bit towards the ischial tuberosity and just see. No, it's not too bad. It's there or it's there.
Yeah, both.
Both. Okay.
Both.
So I might then take needles and pop them in here and here. Right, there's the little spot that marked a little bit on the other side there. It's a little higher than that one. It's actually almost S2 level. Huh, I would have to recalculate. I might have said S2 and it might have actually been S2. There's her Psis. I don't know. But I would put needles here and here just to release the terrain, just to open it up, right? Before I'm even starting to do
Perpendicularly
other
or
stuff.
subcutaneously?
Say that again?
Perpendicular?
Oh,
or-
no. I would take a long needle,
Yeah.
like 2-3 inches long,
Mm-hmm.
and just slide it right under the bone there, right next to the bone. It's
Wow.
nice. I've done this millions of times.
Okay.
It doesn't mess people up. There's plenty of flesh there. You can put a needle in 1 or 2 inches. Doesn't have to be a giant thick needle. Just boom, get a little sensation. Boom, get a little sensation. There you go.
What about
Um,
acupuncture?
Sorry?
What about acupuncture?
Yeah, do that too. I use needles because. Oh, I'm an acupuncturist. That's why I do it. But before I was an acupuncturist, I was deep tissue massage. And my personal belief is you can do practically anything you want with, massage or acupuncture or, whatever your modality is. It's all the same system. Okay, so that's the sacroiliac joints. So let's talk a little bit about, we've got the bladder points coming down, and then we've got the bladder 31, 32, 33, and 34. And bladder 31, 32, 33, and 34 are the sacral foramen, these little holes that we're trying to find inside the sacrum. Now, of course, they correspond to the vertebrae, and what's nice about the sacral foramen is they're actually pretty much in the middle of the vertebra. So if you're trying to find a sacral foramen, the reality is a lot of the time you can't find them. And for acupuncturists, this is more critical because we're trying to get needles into that foramen, into that hole. And a lot of the time, you can't do it. You can maybe get a needle close to it, but even knowing where it is to get a needle into it can be tricky. Maybe I'm just not a good acupuncturist with this, but I only get it right, 30-40% of the time in terms of like, boom. There it goes. It sinks all the way in. I can see it's going through the foramen. A lot of the time I'm missing, but it still can be really effective. Even if the needle's missing slightly or is above it or something, it can still be effective. So these sacral foramen, bladder 31, 32, 33, and 34. Here's what's interesting to me, and it's just on the level of naming. The names of them are Shengliao, Ciliao, Zhongliao, and Xiaoliao. So Shengliao means the upper liao, and liao is the term used for a hole in a bone. It's actually a beautiful term because it's a depiction of a bone, and then it's a depiction of feathers. Yeah, and that's just interesting to me, that fusing together of two very opposite sort of ideas. These liaos are where the exiting sacral nerves actually will come out through those liaos. So what's interesting about the naming of it is it's upper, second, middle, and lower. And guess which vertebra level the one called middle corresponds to? S3, right, which I'm suggesting to you is the earth energy. And every time you see the character Zhong, it's some kind of reference to middle. But if you have a sequence of 4 and you name them upper, second, middle, and lower, It's not actually logical to name the third one middle, but yet it's logical if you think of S3 as Earth. And it's logical because of the Zhonglu Shu. The bladder 29 has the character Zhong in it as well. Okay. I don't have much to say about these sacral layout points, except they're awesome. They're effective local points. That's what I know about them and what I use them for. For if you're working on anything with the bladder, the uterus, the prostate, the genitals, and because you're working with the sacrum, you can start to adjust the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, right? Because your parasympathetic nervous system can be adjusted from here and here, and the sympathetic along here. So by working on the sacrum, you can oftentimes get people out of stress. Literally, you can sink the stress energy down. Even as I'm working on her liao points, she's calming down. Am I imagining that, or are you?
No, you're right.
Yeah, she's kind of calming.
Absolutely.
She's actually sinking. She's calming and sinking. So these are great points to just balance people out. I don't exactly know where these foramen are, but once you know how to find the vertebrae, you can pretty much guess it. Here's her PSIS, here's her S1, here's her S2. So, and they're slanted like this on the sacrum. So the one connected to or close to the PSIS is normally the easiest to find. In her case, she's got a nice bit of muscle right there, so you'd have to go through the muscle to get to it. S3 is actually often, Zhongliao, bladder 33 is often pretty easy. In her case, I've got that one really clearly, I think, because there's no more muscle there. My finger can just drop into it. The last one sometimes disappears. It sometimes gets swallowed up by the hiatus of the sacrum right there. In her case, it might still be there. I'm not quite sure. Okay. Oh, here's another cool point. Bladder 54, which I forgot to mention. Bladder 54 is like on the outer bladder line, at the level of the tailbone, and so it becomes automatically that great, sacral iliac point that, I think has some relationship perhaps to what you were talking about. Zhebian has long been noted by the Chinese as an amazing point for hip pain. Just an empirical, pop a needle there, you get a great reaction.
That looks more like sciatic nerve.
Well, what we often do with the sciatic nerve, could easily be for sciatic nerve, but we often will find gallbladder 30 for sciatic nerve. So you find the greater trochanter, and you go a third of the way from the greater trochanter to the hiatus of the sacrum, and it's right in there. We pop the needle right in there until it gets, boom, sciatic reaction of jumping and shooting down to the foot.
Yeah.
That's a cool one. But it's not very far from Zhebian. They're pretty close. Right? So they could both be used for that for sure. Okay, let me talk about the lumbar spine, and then I'll set you loose on each other. Finding the lumbar spine, there's a really easy way to do this. It's sort of a shortcut way. Now, in acupuncture school, you're often taught that if you take your hands and you put them on top of the iliac crest here, and then you kind of slide your hand over, that's going to be L3. But when you talk to chiropractors and people who actually look at x-rays all day and kind of know what they're doing with bones, they're quite clear that the bone here is actually at the level of L4.
Always.
Right, always, right?
Always.
Yeah. The fat pad is at the level of L3. Now remember, the ancient Chinese, people have got clothes on, they're probably not removing them, and so they're going like this. Now when you go like that, you're at L3, right? When you go down to the bone and you dig underneath, remember that fat pad I talked about that's part of the diamine that intersects L3? You can very nicely see it in her, actually. When you go down to the...
Because you're
it's
thin.
good.
It's because you're thin.
Actually, yeah, it's true. And tall, so you get a nice long stretch there. So when you go down to the bone, that's going to be L4 typically. And then you can double check yourself. So if you find the Psis, which is super easy to find on her, typically L5S1 is going to be at a 30-degree angle to your PSISs. So you're going to make a triangle. It's like this. Zoop, zoop. It's not an equilateral triangle. It's not like that. It's at about a 30-degree angle. And you will come to L5S1. And then you want to check if it is L5S1. So you simply move your finger to the side and you see, is that flesh or bone? Oh, that's flesh. Then you go down one notch and you move your finger to the side. Oh, that's bone. Totally clearly. So I know that I'm at the end of the sacrum and the beginning of the lumbar zone, right? Simple, easy to do. PSIS, 30-degree angle. Check to the side if you're confused. There's your L5. And then if you want to double check that, you find the bone. There's the top of the bone, and that's going to be L4. There's the top of the fat pad, the diamond pad, and that's L3. Got it? That makes sense to you guys? Just as a quick hands-on method of finding these things. PSIS, 30 degrees, L5, check the top of the bone, L4, check the top of the little diamond pad right there, and you've got L3. Now if you get down to this level, so that you're looking at her spine, then you can clearly see the delineation of L2. Here's the PSIS, here's L5, here's L4, here's L3, and then L2 is going to be starting to go up, right?
Okay.
Remember, L2 corresponds to the kidney energy, which is the root of the chi of your body and the root of your will and the root of all kinds of things. And it's ascending out of that lumbar curve, that inward lumbar lordosis. It's coming from the yin, and we've got the beginning really of the yang movement, up and out. So when you're looking at L2, you should almost always see that you're not at the bottom of the curve. The bottom of the curve is normally going to be L3/L4. Could be both, could be one or the other. But you're definitely out of it when you hit L2. Right? That's just another way to think about it. If you find yourself, I've seen a lot of acupuncturists putting the kidney shoe points down here, right at the bottom of that curve, and it's actually not accurate. And because we're now interested now in elements, we want to actually get more accuracy, ideally, as to where we place the needles. So let me go back and do this again, because I just lost my place. L5, L4, L3, L2, L1. So, L1, I'm dealing with a fire energy, right? Now we know the point just to the side of L1 is triple burner, right? And then even further out to the side of that, we've got Huangmen, which is, we think, along with gallbladder 43 and Bao Huang down here, are points that can regulate the membranes, right, and regulate fire and water. Bear in mind that right above L1 is T12, and a T12 is the stomach point, where she has a little bit of extra fire going on. Except it's on the left, not the right, so maybe not stomach fire. But the stomach is about fire, as much as the triple burner is about fire. And we tend to sometimes forget that in modern acupuncture, because we say stomach's the earth organ, stomach's the earth organ, but, you know, the stomach was considered almost like a separate entity than the spleen in a lot of the time in ancient Chinese thinking. And as much as it's an earth organ, it's also a fire organ. And it's right there next to the fire vertebra, which I think is kind of important to think about, the T12. So then we come down to L2, and we've got the kidney point, and we've got the will point, and we've got the water energy. And then we come down to L3, and you've got the daimai and the earth energy, and all that stuff. And then we come down to L4, large intestine, and you know, the wood energy, the uterus is definitely going to be an area where I might work on uterus stuff right around L4, and then L5, a more metal energy, a more structural energy, actually, but also related to large intestine. And when you see metal in these schematas, very often I'm thinking structure. We tend to think of the bones as corresponding to water energy in Chinese medicine. I think of metal as corresponding to bones quite often too in my thinking. You remember, bones are made of crystal. Substantially, they're made of hydroxyapatite crystals. And all crystallization is the function of metal. And the idea of water energy is that water can congeal and crystallize into an ice form, which we call the Jing. This is how that energy gets stored. So a metal energy is also very structural, and we'll see that later on as well once we get up to this zone here. But if you think looking at metal at the level of the lumbar spine, it's L5, and then again, it's right at S5 in the hiatus of the sacrum. These are places where you can actually adjust the structural components of how the bones are moving in relation to each other. Okay, so maybe we're going to set up tables, and also you can use the treatment rooms. There's 5 treatment rooms with tables, and they're all available right now. And we'll put another 4 tables up out here. And then get a partner, or you can work in 3s if you want, if it's easier to think it through with 2 people. And we're going to start exploring the vertebrae. And I think what we might do is like do a little element meditation on each vertebra, like what it means to bring in the element into each vertebra as we work with the vertebra.
Are you going to lead us through each point?
Yeah, and then I'll let you just play a little bit.
To each element.
Yeah, I want you to tune into the element and kind of channel the element into the person.
Start with the 8.
Think about it.
Yeah, and they go down. But I did, I mean,
L2, and then you look down above. Oh, is it starting to go up? Oh, yeah, it is actually. Distinctly starting to go up.